Welcome to the Stanish Inquisition, a podcast where Stan Zalowski, serial entrepreneur and CEO of Movista, talks with guests about anything, from family life to personal life, recipes for success, or grandma's potato salad. The name is dark, but the content isn't. It's often unexpected, occasionally funny, sometimes irreverent, but always interesting.
Hello and welcome to episode several of the Stanish Inquisition. This is your faithful host, Stan Zalowski, coming to you live from the Ice House in beautiful Bentonville, Arkansas, where it actually is beautiful right now. And joining us from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a city whose nickname escapes me completely. I believe it's known as the Terrible Towel Town.
The Steel City, man.
Oh, the Steel City. Oh, my gosh. That is a massive faux pas on my part. But from Bossa Nova, we have Jeff Hahn with us today, who is, I believe he said he's the Vice Emperor of Products at Bossa Nova. Is that correct, Jeff?
That is accurate. Yeah, thank you for remembering.
Hey, listen, thanks for joining us today. If you don't know about Bossa Nova, they're one of the most forward technology companies in retail, particularly in the brick and mortar space, and they're doing really cool things. I'm not going to steal your thunder, Jeff, but we'll talk about that a little bit. But as usual on the Inquisition, we love to get behind the minds in the industry and just sort of understand what makes people tick. And usually we start out in the crib. So where were you in the crib?
I was born in Connecticut. I was actually birthed in the hospital at Yale University in good old New Haven, Connecticut.
Wow, that's a great start.
Right? I know. I think it set the stage right there for good things to come.
Well, and that what a perfect segue. I'm going to hire you as co-host. Where did you go next?
After college, my first industry was the hospitality industry. So I worked at a hotel, and I actually worked in the banquets and food and beverage part of it. And I was mostly responsible for setting up banquets at first. And when I say banquets, it's anything from like a small business meeting of 4 people to a wedding reception for 200 plus people, right? And at the time I didn't realize it, but that was, that job was project management. So, at the time I just thought I was moving stuff around and putting tablecloths on tables. But, I now realize that kind of where I got my project management chops.
See, I love this. You start off with a strong work ethic. You had a family that worked. You work hard in school, and then you end up in roles that are challenging you to multitask and balance all these things. And my guess is, as a younger person at this point, you're managing people significantly your senior, and learning and putting those. Well, I shouldn't say learning them, because you mentioned you had them. Putting those influencing skills to work. So that's amazing. It's funny whenever we have a chance, and thankfully that's often, to talk to folks who are starting out in their careers or maybe in a transition point. Love to talk about just put your bat belt on and start putting grappling hooks and batons and sprays and whatever you can into your bat belt. And later on, you'll know when it's time to use those different things. And it's always interesting to hear how people, in my parlance, filled their bat belt. And so that's really fascinating. And also, I would say that's sort of a pattern match that we see quite often is someone has the experience of working in a role and then moving up into a different role where they're now pushing work downstream into their former role. And I think you get a very interesting perspective at that point, and you're much better at your second role than someone who had not had the experience of trying to execute, right? You don't ask for impossible things. You organize the data differently, et cetera. So just, more, those are some observations, I guess, just calling out how interesting that is. So then how does it all work, right? So you do these roles, and then what happens? How do you end up going to the next thing?
Yeah, I spent a few years in my, mid 20s, bouncing back and forth between Florida and Pittsburgh. I was still doing the hospitality, food and beverage stuff, bartending down in Southern Florida a little bit, did some sales and marketing jobs, just trying to find what I wanted to do next. And I eventually, ended up back in Pittsburgh and taking a job in the financial services industry. It kind of opened my eyes to a whole another world in Pittsburgh of tech and startups. And I started looking around to see what was going on in Pittsburgh. And I think once I came across Bossa Nova and, saw what they were doing and thought about the opportunity that was in front of them, and met with a few people from here, I knew it was the right fit for me.
So I want to talk a lot about Bossa Nova. So how long, just get my mind right here, how long did you end up being at the credit company?
Over a decade.
Wow. Okay. I wasn't ready for that. I'm taking a moment. Okay. Somehow I didn't. I thought there was going to be another stop of the train before we got to the current station. So let me back up though. Before we talk about specifically Bossa Nova, which I definitely want to dig into, let's talk a little bit about, because I'm totally fascinated. I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast are interested in these different sort of economic pockets and cultural pockets around the country where people are doing kind of cool and interesting things. And I know, Pittsburgh is, first of all, I love Pittsburgh. Let me say that up front. As a visitor, right? I've been there many times and I enjoy it. But it's not, it's a fairly isolated town, right? It's not, obviously it's not on the coast. It's a town where you meet people whose family has been there for 9 generations sometimes. You don't necessarily mentally equate that with new, fresh technology, entrepreneurial spirit, that sort of thing. So give us the 60-second or however long you want to take commercial on sort of that environment in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think a lot of people's perception is similar to yours. It's an old steel town, blue collar, people that grow up here, stay here. But I think, that's changing, and that's the transition that Pittsburgh's going through right now. As I look out my window now, I can, see a bunch of new buildings popping up and companies like Argo and Uber and Facebook and Google, are all setting up shop here. And I think it has a lot to do, with the local universities here. Obviously, Carnegie Mellon University is huge when it comes to technology and robotics and AI. As well as a number of other good universities in the area.
So fair to say that the entrepreneurial ecosystem is being fed by the universities, right? Are there big? Yep. Is the state behind entrepreneurship from your perspective? Do you see Pennsylvania stepping up with the tax incentives and those sorts of things? Do you see much of that, or I don't know how tuned in you are to that?
They certainly are. I'm not very tuned into that, but I know that, they're definitely pumping it up. And I think, all of that combined with the cost of living here, property costs are very low.
Okay. All right. So lower cost of living, a lot of educated folks, support from the government, private dollars flowing pretty well. Are the corporations there? I know obviously Hahn is there. You see a lot of that support for.
I don't.
Uh-oh. Okay. Well, there's an opportunity. Listen, if you're listening, Mr. and Miss Hahn, we need more dollars.
That doesn't mean it's not happening. That just means that, I'm not tuned into it.
Okay, very fair. All right, so let's go back to Bossa Nova. I think I've tapped your in-depth knowledge of the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Pittsburgh.
My very shallow.
So what? Okay, so just for listeners who don't know, what is Bossa Nova? What's it all about?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Bossa Nova is powering the transformation of retail with real-time state-of-store insights. So what does that mean? I think a lot of people equate Bossa Nova with a robotics company. We do have an autonomous robot that roams retail environments capturing images and capturing data from the shelves. And we also have, state-of-the-art AI behind that to analyze and extract the insights from that. So,
in a sentence, is it fair to say that you're in the information business?
Yeah, I'd say we're in the data business.
Okay, I like that.
Yep.
And I do think that there's a tremendous amount of focus and attention around the robots. I mean, people just, since the Jetsons were on, which was in the 60s, people have been excited about the coming of robots, right? Robots are going to either save us all or potentially destroy us all, or maybe they'll save us, then they'll destroy us. I don't know. But what's that experience been like from your perspective? How have you found it as a product manager on the robot side, right? Like, I don't know. I'm just generally curious at the reactions you've received, at the sort of high points and low points. Anything you'd want to share around that?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, so at this point we're publicly in 350 Walmarts, and we have plans to go into 1,000 by the end of this year. And you think about, that level of exposure to a lot of people who haven't seen a robot before. And when they first see it, they really don't know what it is. They might think it's cleaning the floor, or it's purifying the air, or, very few people really understand what it is doing. And you get all sorts of reactions from people who are very curious. Little kids come up and hug it. They love it. Elderly folks dancing with it. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I love that. But it is, in fact, cleaning the floor, right? No,
it is not cleaning the floor.
No, it's not cleaning the floor. Okay, well, let's get to it. Then what is it doing? I'm totally mystified by it. What is it doing?
Yeah. It's just interesting because, again, like you and I both mentioned, everybody kind of keys on the robot. And really, the robot is roaming around taking pictures, right? I mean, there's a lot more to it and how it works. It's obviously fully autonomous. And I think to date, we've navigated over 1 million aisles in retail environments, and taken millions and millions and millions of photos. But really, that's what the robot does. It's very sophisticated, but it roams around and takes pictures and gathers other spatial data from within the retail environment.
So why does that matter, right? Like, what's the value in all of that, Jeff? Whether it's the robot or some of your other technologies, I'm sure you're digging into and having fun with. Ultimately, why does anyone care? And I hope I know the answer, but I'd love for you to share it with the listeners.
The data matters. If we go back to kind of our mission statement of Bossa Nova, we're powering the transformation of retail, right? And the way we do that is with real-time state-of-the-store insights. And the data is those insights. And the transformation is, what we're all here for. What's happening in retail? You hear buzzwords, digital transformation, omni-channel experience, click and mortar, these things that are happening for retailers to be able to survive and thrive. Part of what they need is this data. They need to know what's going on in their stores at all times. I think that essentially retailers are really looking to turn their stores into micro-fulfillment centers. And in order to do that, they need to know what's in their store and where every product is at all times.
Okay, fair. And a lot of the work that your toolbox does is helping them understand what is or is likely to be soon out of stock. Fair?
Yeah, the first step in that is definitely making sure that the products that shoppers want are on the shelf. And, the first product that we brought to market in our core product right now is that out of stock detection. So being able to take those images that the robot's capturing, run them through our AI, and deliver in real time the products that are missing So, to feed that through the supply chain to make sure that they get that back on the shelf as quickly as possible.
And in full disclosure, Movista working really hard to partner up with you guys to do that last mile portion, right? Hopefully we'll get that done, but I don't want that to anyone listening later to say, wait a second. But I know we're not the only ones.
Yeah, I think in order to achieve the full vision, we do work with retail technology experts like Movista to deliver a full end-to-end solution. And the product that you offer is the perfect complement to Bossa Nova to help turn those insights into actions. Well,
I don't want to make this a Movista commercial, but I will say you're absolutely correct. Now, I do want to put some corners and edges on this for folks who are listening. It may not be, totally tied into retail. So the estimates I've seen from independent organizations who do those sorts of estimates are that out of stocks drive about $1 trillion worldwide annually. $1 trillion, meaning someone went into a store, they were going to buy a product, it was not available, and they either bought a different product, which cost that particular brand money, or they simply didn't find what they wanted in a category and they walked out of a store, which cost that retailer the sale. And most of the time in consumables, that sale will never be made up, right? So
beyond that sale, what's the impact to customer loyalty, right?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great call out. And another big part of this, and you alluded to it earlier, is the continuity of the online experience to the in-store experience, then giving that customer the brand experience they expect is a huge part of why keeping brick and mortar beautiful is such a point of emphasis now. So I think it's really fascinating. Can you speak to any of, I'll just open the floor for you. Like, is there anything that you're working on outside of, your current public offerings, that sort of thing, that you can speak to even from a standpoint of, categorically, right? Are you looking at other means of collecting data? Are you guys always doing sort of research in that regard?
Yeah, of course. I think one of the great things about our product is it is really based on the AI platform, which is sensor or capture agnostic. As long as we can have a sensor that can take pictures and feed it through our AI engine, and that sensor will be different for different size retailers for sure. I think, the market is telling us that right now for the market segment that we're in, the robot that we have is the right sensor, but we're definitely always researching and experimenting to find the right sensor for each environment.
So sort of putting a bow on this thing, is there we'll know we've made it when, or we've got, do you have some defined goals that are public that you guys are sharing, or I'm sure you're tracking those things internally. You don't have to give me any of that. I'm just curious if there's anything that we should be looking out for from the outside looking at Bossa Nova.
Our vision is to map the retail world, right? Every store, every day. And what that really means to shoppers, to consumers, is that, the retailers that work with Bossa Nova, you'll know what's in their store at all times, whether you're in the store, looking online, if you're ordering groceries to be delivered by a third party, you'll know what's in the store. You'll know where it is in the store. And you won't have to deal with the pain of the product not being there or being offered substitutions, or, we're just really looking to improve that customer experience for everybody.
I like it very much. I love that you have this string of the customer as the barometer, right? Or the customer experience as the barometer of success. I definitely love that. I think that's brilliant, and very interesting. That and something to admire, that instead of looking at it from a standpoint of, well, we want to hit this financial hurdle, or we want to be in this situation, that you would sort of say, hey, look, you'll know we've got everything done we need to get done when you as a consumer know the truth in real time. I think that's great, Jeff. That's absolutely brilliant. So let's just take a step back and talk a little bit about how now, as COVID is raging and retail is changing, almost in real time. What have you heard around robots, if anything new or different, or how are you all thinking about the role of the robots or other artificial intelligence in this new age now where everyone's going to be hypersensitive to human contact?
I think it's definitely, shined a light on a lot of the things we were already working on and already knew. Obviously, in our world, having robots that roam around retail environments and, identify products that are out of stock, it's a very important thing all the time. And now, there's two new reasons in today's world why that's so important. One is products are running out of stock much faster and in much higher quantities. So trying to find, which products to replenish first becomes more important. And, our technology is able to help the retailers do that. And then just collecting this data safely, right? Not necessarily putting a person in harm's way to walk up and down each aisle and scan inventory and find what's out of stock. Having an autonomous robot that's able to do that for the store is very important right now, obviously.
So now with a whole 2 or 3 weeks of COVID under your belt, I would ask, what's next?
Sure. I think, this has opened up a lot of shoppers' eyes to what's out there as far as online ordering and picking up at the store or even delivery, and the opportunities for automation there, throughout the supply chain, all the way to the last mile. There's people solving those problems all over the place out there. And I think, the amount of business that'll move towards online ordering, will only motivate retailers to start exploring a lot of these solutions. And, what we've previously talked about is, no matter how I want to order something, if I want to order it online and go pick it up in the store or have it delivered, or I want to go to the store, these retailers are focused on that omni-channel experience. And as a shopper, I should be able to look on your app or on your website and know exactly, what's in your store at all times, how many you have left, where it is in the store, and that way, regardless of how I want to receive that product, I know it's there and I know where it is and I know how I'm going to get it.
All right. Well, listen, this has been episode something or the other of the Standish Inquisition with Jeff Hahn, the director, I believe it is actually technically director of product development. Did I get it right that time?
Product management, so close.
Damn. Over at Bossa Nova, great people doing great work. And here at Movista, we continue to plod along in our own little fight for efficiency in retail. I want to thank you for taking time to listen to us, and we look forward to talking to you again. Until then, hasta luego.